power that cannot see past my skin. My views are viewed as ignorant.
Well, welcome back to At the Round Table with Manly. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. And my co-host, my brother from another. Yes, he's there for a few more minutes. Dr. Bradley is in the house. You're listening to At the Round Table with Manly. The calling number here is 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. We want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations.
Amen.
Amen. Well, Dr. Brad, that was very
that was very good. Man, that was a very good conversation.
Yeah.
I do ask those brothers to call back on that, because I think people listening need to understand the history of Haiti. Haiti has a very interesting history, and I do invite people to go out and read about it and research it.
Yeah.
Because when I read about it, I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? They just finished paying off the debt that's associated with their rebellion.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's just an amazing place, and we need to appreciate.
Yes.
In fact, America was influenced. American slavery was influenced by the Haitian rebellion. After the French lost that island, what ended up happening was that a lot of the slave owners wanted to come to America, and America was very concerned about slave owners bringing in slaves who were actively and successfully rebelled and tore down the slave empire in Haiti. So it was a very interesting piece of history.
Well, not only that, people understand is the Caribbean was the gateway, right, where the slave trade took place, and that
yes,
the big reason why we have these different cultures in these areas is from the fact that during people were dropped off in those areas.
I often say to people, so we took the model and put it into our own culture, but in actuality, we all come from Africa. Everyone, really. I mean, if I'm African American, the Irish is African Irish, the Japanese is African Japanese. We all originate from Africa, and that is that's history. Look at the anthropology. That's history. I'm sorry, that's science. But my point here is that we put these caste system based on the appearance into place. So we could feel better than other people, even within our own culture, our own ethnicity. We see, light skin, black, dark, brown, all that stupidity. But in actuality, we're all God's children. We're all people.
Right.
You know what I mean? We all gonna bleed and die in so many years.
Right.
You know what I mean? Deal with the facts of life. But the issue here is that we need to understand that we have problems too within our own culture.
Right. Well, we've been taught to hate each other that don't.
We don't like
talk
ourselves.
Like us,
we don't like ourselves.
Look like us.
I can tell you, just being a very dark-skinned black man, we don't like ourselves.
Right.
I have, like I said to my wife, I love the fact that God made me dark. I love the honor that my people that way. I just wish you would have made my skin thicker because it hurts when my own people laugh at it. I don't care about the white folks, but when my own people laugh at it, I'm like, oh my God, how far we have to go when you can't appreciate what your people look like when they came here before they were mixed. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the point. Yeah, that's what we're missing. We got to become proud of ourselves.
That's a very good point. A great point. I want to bring our guests into. I know Kirk is on the line. Kirk, good morning, sir. How are you? I don't know if Class of Hobbs has him down.
Yeah, you probably have him.
Yeah.
On.
So.
Well, let me go and welcome Cora.
Okay. Yeah, and send Pastor Hobbs back in here so that at least somebody can push the buttons while you're.
He's trying to get situated over there.
Yeah. So.
He's trying to. I think we have a caller on. Did we lose him?
You did not lose him. They're muted. I was getting
okay.
the door.
No, we get you.
Oh no, you're getting the door and preparing other things.
Yeah. No, okay. All right. So, all right. Here we go. We have a guest. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, Kirk. We're just waiting for Cora to come in, and I'm not sure if the guest with her. we can get started on this next topic. I know Dr. Bradley is going to so willingly relinquish his seat.
Yeah, I noticed Pastor Hobbs pull up his fourth seat here, brother. That's not necessary, man.
No. So, all right.
I'm gonna mess with you, man.
All right.
You know I love you, man. You know, you're my people, man. Come on.
Right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break so we can get our guests
situated,
set up here.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna be right back. So Pastor Hobbs is gonna set that up for us and give him a moment to take a breath.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You're listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Leo. We're gonna take our break and we'll be right back. All right.
I wrote 300 songs in 1 year, Boogie will tell you I'm on it. I got unreleased songs for days, they don't want it. Eat any MC in the game, it ain't a challenge. If your music reflects who you are, then you's a coward. I can see through the lies you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, why your dog's in prison? Why your baby mom's stripping, why your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strapped. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle
So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog.
I always dreamed I'd be on tour. Instead of laying dealers on the floor, sitting in the hole, knowing I was meant for more. Swear money's its own addiction. Back then I lacked the vision, so every time I went to sleep, it's like I woke back up in prison. To the brothers coming up, keep your nose in the books. Ignore the looks, so you can give back what we took. The 90s taught us that the government is really corrupt, like the Matrix. Choose the red pill and wake up. The feds raided all major cities from Boston to Watts. Took kids out the classroom and put them in general pop. Where are all the black leaders when you really need them? They killed X and Dr. King and left these house Negroes leading. They probably in church praying people act decent. You gotta be willing to die for your beliefs. Ask Jesus.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle
So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard.
This is Pastor Bruce Wall. Each month, we need to raise $10,000 for Boston Praise Radio and TV, WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio, and Boston Black News. We have 3 stations, and we air on 39 different radio, TV, social media, and internet networks. We now need your help and assistance. If 200 listeners or viewers gave $50 a month, we could meet our expenses. Please send your contributions to Boston Praise Radio and TV or Boston Black News at 670 Washington Street, Dorchester, Mass., zip code 02124. That's Boston Praise Radio and TV or Boston Black News at 670 Washington Street in Dorchester, Mass., zip code 02124. Or you can use Cash App at $BPR TV, Cash App at $BPR TV. Thank you for being partners with our station and helping us to stay on the air.
All right, good. Welcome back to At the Round Table with Mel. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio, my brother, Dr. Bradley, is taking a little break while we get through this next segment here. You want to give us a call in and enjoy the conversation. The number is 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. You are listening to At the Round Table with Mamla. Again, our sponsor is in studio today, Cora Holbrook from Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, along with our guests. And we're going to go around the table and have folks do a self-introduction. And we also have a couple of guests on the line as well as we talk about this. Really, like I said, if you have children in the room, this might be a little bit much for them. So if you want to have them leave the room while they're listening to this, because when we're talking about human trafficking and the how it's very destructive there, but these folks are going to bring this most important topic to you this morning. So again, the call-in number is 617-282-0685. I'm going to start to my right, and we'll make our way around down there. Good morning, Cora. Welcome
Good
back.
morning. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Larry, and Dr. Bradley, and of course, Frankie. Thank you very much. Cora Holbrook, Guaranteed Rate.
All right, and to her right.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. My name is Ambassador Sean Bardum, Human Rights Ambassador for Queen Maria Amor from the Philippines, and I'm also a human rights activist. And it's such an honor to be here talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking, and the global work that we're doing.
All right, we're going to get into that. If you don't mind pulling your mic up just a little bit. There we go.
Sure.
Thank you. And to your right there.
Yeah, I'm very honored to be here today. My name is Marley Sime. I am the founder of Chris Foundation. Yeah, our work is focused on human rights. Yeah, with a deep focus on education, health, and access to justice.
All right, thank you. And on the line, we have Renee Callender, who is a retired Boston police detective. She has her own nonprofit called Conflict Resolution, Inc., in which she is now the founder and the CEO of that. But she is a retired detective in the Boston Police Department, and she worked in human trafficking. So I asked her to join in this conversation because she is an expert on this subject matter, so she can give a lot of information for us. And also, Kirk Thompson is on the line. Good morning, Kirk. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here with you again today. Thank you.
Likewise. And good morning, Renee. Are you there?
Good morning, Larry. How are you?
Good. I'm glad Dr. Bradley has two hands so he can show me his coffee and donut. Brother, something else. So we're going to get right into this. You know, like I said, there's nothing humorous about this, like I said. I want to start off. Explain to folks a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, sir, how human trafficking and also the fact that we talk about immigration and how this equates together, because people realize that people are more likely to be exploited who are in the country maybe illegally. We know it happens to people who are citizens, but there's a huge disadvantage to someone who feels like they can't go to the government if something like this is taking place.
So human trafficking is an issue which is many times misunderstood. People think it's something that's fictional. People think it's something happening on the movies. People think it's something that you read about, but it's real life. Many individuals who come to the United States who are undocumented tend to feel that the only way they have to find employment is to work what we call under the table. And many times when you see a person at a gas station and you come back and they're still there, when you see someone who might be fearful of prosecution in their country, those are the most vulnerable people. And that's how people get exploited, and many people fall prey to human trafficking.
So, Renee, I want to bring you in on your expertise and then before we get to our other guests. And can you give us a little background? You worked in the human trafficking of the Boston Police Department. Give us your overview of how you the work that you did there and your victims and how people became victimized in this area.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning.
The first thing I want to start off by saying is when people think about human trafficking, they only think about the sex trade. But what they don't realize is that people are, like your guest just stated, people are trafficked in so many different ways, through labor, through sex. A lot of people who are brought here illegally, like your caller stated, especially if they're brought here by what's called mules, and their documents are taken from them, then they're forced into the sex trade. And what happens is, when you're forced into the sex trade, you're trying to pay off a debt that sometimes is never paid off, and you're forced to do things against your will. And what we found was a lot of people especially women in the sex trade, were being forced, but they were also being penalized and criminalized for behavior in which they had no control over. And so there's been laws that has been passed to decriminalize the victims of human trafficking.
So when you say penalize and criminalize, you're talking about from the criminal justice systems for being exploited, but then what they're doing is a crime, and that's not taken into consideration that they're being exploited. It's not a lot of times in this instance of the human trafficking, they're not doing this voluntarily, but then when they're caught, they're the ones who usually pay the price first, and in most instances, the only one that pays the price.
Exactly, because the crime in and of itself really doesn't include, or the I shouldn't say include, but the person who's doing the trafficking is kind of hands off, and sometimes it's not even associated with the daily activity in which and in the majority of the time, I'm going to say females, but males also are victimized by this crime, are not directly associated, and therefore he is normally not caught at the onset, in the beginning of the as the crime is being occurred. It's normally the female or the male who is doing the direct action. And so laws have been put in place in Massachusetts where the authorities have realized that people are being forced to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. The unfortunate piece about this crime as well is that nobody is exempt. And I've seen victims from two-parent households, single-parent households, prominent households. So it's not like, society wants to believe that it is only happening or only the victims are only from underserved, low-poverty areas, and that's not correct. That is definitely a misconception.
So also, I just want a quick follow-up. So also, Renee, working in that field for the Boston Police Department, when the people that are exploiting this, i.e., whether it be the person that is propositions people for sex, or having these folks working in their homes or in their businesses and exploiting that, how much are they held accountable for, if at all? Because usually they almost look that nonsensical in the sense that they don't get as much punishment as the person that is being exploited.
Well, that's kind of a complex question, and the reason being is it depends on the magnitude of the crime that's being committed. If you look at it on the federal level, yes, they're prosecuted at a very light stench, whereas if you look at it on the state level, the threshold is not as severe, and it's not as the punishment almost sometimes doesn't fit the crime, just because of the everlasting effect of the victim, because there is a long-lasting effect as what has occurred to them. And when we want to talk about mental health, definitely affects your mental health.
All right. So, Attorney Samay, you founded the Chris Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and what you're trying to do with that and how it fits in with this conversation?
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind pulling the mic. We want to hear it.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, Chris Foundation is named after my father. Okay. Yes, who passed away in 2015. This was a man who was...
Excuse me, Larry.
Yes.
We can't hear her.
Oh, you can. Oh, I'm
louder.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was saying that Chris Foundation was named after my father, who passed away in 2015. And Chris Foundation was incorporated in Massachusetts in 2018. We human trafficking encompasses human right. Yes, because when someone is trafficked, their human rights are violated. Yes, when you're forced to work, everybody was born with freedom, with free will. So when you're forced to work, they are violating your human right. That's how. And Chris Foundation partner with Mover in working human trafficking.
All right. So, Kirk, you're listening to all this. What do you have to say? It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in, Larry, but the reality is we all have to realize that this is an American problem that we have to find solutions to. Even as recently as November at our National Leadership Training Conference for all of our presidents of local associations and CEOs from around the country, we did have a group come in to talk about this specific issue because realtors are everywhere in the community and we're in a number of homes. So we identified that we were uniquely in a position to potentially help by better educating our members to identify signs of where someone might be trafficked and then be able to report that if you see something, say something type initiative to help hopefully have a positive impact on this epidemic.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point you just brought up because people have to, a lot of times they set up locations and realtors are the ones who are actually the ones that they're releasing from, and you go and the signs are there, and a lot of times people just ignore it because they don't know what to do. So I'm glad you brought that out. So Attorney Bartow, what is it that folks that are listening that want to be helpful in identifying this, but also how they can help people do the work that you and Attorney Simei and are doing to help these victims of this human trafficking?
So one of the things that we're doing, we're working very closely with the judicial system, with lawyers, with judges, with advocates, and the community to really educate people on what the signs of human trafficking really are.
And could you highlight some of those for us, if you could?
Yeah, so we're working very closely to make sure that when a person gets arrested, like the officer said earlier, you quickly get arraigned, and many times the facts are not properly, discussed with the district attorney. So we're working to make sure that rehabilitation happens in a different manner, and people recognize that what may appear to be a certain crime or charge may not be that case. And that's the only way we're going to be able to hold the perpetrators accountable, by making sure that the victim it doesn't continue to get victimized through the whole judicial system. Because what we find is many times when a person is charged with a crime that they may not have done voluntarily, the person has a rap sheet. And what happens is when they try to find employment, they're not employable. So those individuals who are victims now begin to have no other option but to support themselves. If it's, for example, someone who's in the industry of sex work, that person now begins to feel it's okay to work in, for example, prostitution, because they have no other means and are employable. So we're working very closely on education, like Attorney Simi said, making sure that we really educate, law enforcement officers, judges, and the district attorneys, that we work with, to really understand the characteristics and to have a little bit of humanity and a little bit of compassion, because the legal profession is very fast. It's a very cold industry. People are trained not to feel or think, you just react.
Is there an age group that people in the trade target, or it doesn't matter the age?
So in human trafficking, usually someone as young as 6 years old, it can be human trafficked. Yes. Airlines, for example, have a curriculum where they train in their staff and their flight attendants to report and recognize what the signs are. For example, if you're in the United Emirates or in Dubai or in Saudi Arabia, it's not uncommon for an older man to be on a flight with a 12-year-old girl who is usually, sex trafficked. So airlines now have a mandated requirement where if you see something, you have to say something.
So, Attorney Sime, so this is an international problem, right?
Yes.
How, again, the question to you is, how does folks here local, like here in Massachusetts, folks that are listening out there who are unfamiliar with it, or they see it but don't know where to go, they're kind of afraid to go to law enforcement, or they kind of see folks that they think they may be willing participants in this, but that may not be the case. How do you suggest these folks approach that?
Yes, we try to educate them by campaigning. We have many campaigns. Last year we had an event where we talked to folks, just come out, because it's kind of tricky. They are in between two fires. The perpetrator like blackmail them and say, if you go to you don't have, you are undocumented. If you go to the police, they will send you home. For example, for the labor trafficking, if you go to they will send you home. So they are there, they can do anything, they can talk. So we tell them, come. It's not always like that. You were brought here illegally to work for someone. So it's true, you are undocumented, but that's not how it works. We protect you. The police is here to protect you too. Yes.
So, Renee, to that point, you worked in the human trafficking. Were there a lot of resources available for folks who maybe wanted to get out, a safe house, some place for them to stay? Were there resources for people so that they don't have to be in this repeat? So if for instance, where they make bail or they're released, but they have to go back into the situation because that's the only place they know and there's nothing set up. Are there places out there for them to turn to?
Yes, they are.
What I will say to you is, in the beginning of the conception of human trafficking, I would have told you no.
Okay.
But now we have safe homes, especially in the city of Boston. We have shelters where people can go, which becomes a safe haven for them. Within those programs, there are life skill trainings for them. There's the ability, I know Northeastern used to, and I don't know if they still do, but I know they had a certificate program for entrepreneurship for people who have been victims of human trafficking. And a lot of times, and now with human trafficking, even by law enforcement, when a person is identified as a victim, they're not arrested. And they're not arrested. They're offered services. And if the young person is a minor, then Department of Children and Family Services are immediately notified, and the family is notified because a lot of times the family has identified these persons as runaways or missing. So there's a lot more, I think, things put in place to safeguard these young people from being re-victimized. And as adults, I know there's been a lot more programs put in place to help them, lack of a better term, rediscover their own life.
Okay. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. You're listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Leo. We're discussing human trafficking, a really important topic. So we have in studio Attorney Sime, Attorney Bateau. On the line, we have retired Detective Renee Callender. She also has a nonprofit, Conflict Resolutions Inc., that she has started up, but she is an expert in human trafficking and the work that she's done there. Also, Kirk Thompson is on the line. Kirk, I want to swing back to you first, pivot back to you for a second, because you're right. When you said that about the realtors, it didn't connect until you said that. I'm like, yeah, most of this has to have a location a lot of times. Yes, because I think on the sex trade, we mainly think about hotels and things of that nature, but I've seen over the years where there have been businesses where people, nail salon shops and things of that, massage parlors where these things are operating in open plain view. And realtors are really important because they're the ones who a lot of times when people are looking and showing these properties, how do you advise some of the folks in your field to help them to identify if something like this is taking place right before their eyes?
That's a great question, Larry. I think it always comes down to awareness. The more that we're aware of an issue, and as you mentioned earlier in the program, understanding what the signs are of trafficking, we're empowering a much broader base of our citizenship to be able to do something about it. So that intersection between law enforcement and the citizens being able to act in concert to identify these issues are important. I mean, one of my key takeaways, I think your other member just mentioned it on the flight with an older adult and a younger child. You know, things like, you know, not wearing weather-appropriate clothing, the demeanor of how someone is moving in conjunction with an older adult, just noticing those things. The worst-case scenario is that you're wrong. And, you know, and the person has to say, no, this is my child and it's not an issue. The best-case scenario is by seeing something that doesn't feel right and acting upon it, you have the ability to potentially intervene and save a child. And that's a very important mission. And again, the reason why it was a priority for the National Association of Realtors in our 2023 president, Kenny Parcell, is because realtors are in every community across the country, in every single city, and they were uniquely in a position to be able to, with more empowerment and understanding of the problem, be able to hopefully be able to save or be able to identify a potential issue that may make the difference in the life of one child.
Okay. And Attorney Butcher, you want to weigh in?
Yes, there's also a human trafficking hotline number. I'd like to share that number for anyone who might be feeling lost, broken, or know of someone who's being human trafficked. The number is 1-888-373-7888. It's 24 hours a day. It's, you know, in English, Spanish, and over 200 languages. They can also text the word HELP, H-E-L-P, and it's a confidential line where there's help available. So for anyone who may be uneducated or someone who doesn't recognize the signs, they can definitely call the hotline number and just report what they're also witnessing to. The Department of Homeland Security also has a special program called the Blue Project. The federal government has recognized that there is a major issue with human and sex trafficking. So they have developed a private initiative as well for the public.
Well, I was going to follow up with that because this sounds like it's an international problem, to fair to say, right?
Correct.
Are there resources being allocated, not just here, but like when the attorney, Mr. Thompson was saying about folks coming here, if you saw someone coming in with a 12-year-old, and I mean, it could be a parent, rather err on the side of that, of caution. But how's that collaboration working across international lines? Because we're limited. In some countries, it doesn't get the attention that it may get here in the United States with this exploitation. As a matter of fact, we all know that there are countries where it's part of their tourism to have people exploited in their country. How do we work in tandem with things of that nature?
That's a very good question, Larry, and that's what Attorney Simi and I are doing. She's from Cameroon, so in that region of the world, human and sex trafficking, there are many cultural values and norms which are different from being, here in the U.S., for example. So we are working first to change the mindset of the community. We're working to empower individuals. For example, in Cameroon, and she is a big prisoner right advocate attorney as well, and we are really seeing that human rights violations, happened, to everyone, but it seems to be normalized in some countries where people don't recognize what the signs are, or people begin to enable. Yeah. Like, for example, in Cameroon, women many times feel it's okay just to give their daughters, away. For example, in Nigeria, unemployment is really high. So many economical factors in the community and cultural norms really create, I want to say this monster, because
environment,
because what happens too is people begin now to feel that they don't have a choice, and they begin to victimize themselves. For example, in Nigeria, unemployment is really high. So many women are going to Germany, and what is happening too in Germany, they are working in the prostitution industry, and it's very easy for them to travel there. For example, just got a case recently from a young woman who is now, in Qatar, arrested for 14 years. She was told that she would get a job to be a housekeeper and they used her as a mule for human trafficking. She was able to leave South Africa safely, but when she got to Qatar, her luggage was loaded with drugs. So she was human trafficked, for smuggling drugs.
So, Attorney Samay, to Attorney Potatoes, on the international level, when we have Americans and expats who are in other countries, what is the consequences for the individuals who are taking advantage of that? Like, we have Americans who travel abroad. They specifically look for countries that the laws are lax or don't even exist. Are there any consequences for them? Like, for instance, when they come back to the United States, if they've gone there for that reason, do we hold them accountable in any way?
Yes, I would like to say first that human trafficking is something like mafia. Think about it like mafia. Like a drug cartel. Okay. It's very complicated because in some countries, as Sean said, they don't see it as America. Yeah, like in it's cultural wise. Like in Muslim, a girl can be married at 12. It's normal there, but here it's not normal. So when like an American, an expert American, goes out there, even in Europe, in Europe sometimes they say money don't have an order because prostitution, they pay taxes, right? And who are prostitutes? It could be a 12 years old. It could be an 8 years old. So we don't know. So it's complicated because we have to kind of balance mind your own business and helping people. Yeah. When you go, you are an American. You go, for example, in Cameroon and say, okay, what you're doing here, it's wrong. They will tell you, who are you to tell us what we are doing here, it's wrong. So I think it's better to try to tackle organization like United Nations that can have like a hand on all those countries to kind of say, oh, hey, look, what you're doing here, you have to review your laws. You have to start changing this. You don't see this, but you have to look at this human trafficking thing. It's a big industry. Right. It's bringing a lot of money, but it's dirty money. Yeah. Let us try to look through this together and change.
Right. So I guess because what Renee was saying is that, here we hold people a little bit more accountable. But I'm saying is that when we have people who go and exploit this situation, like you said, well, we know that if I go to a country and I know that if I were to engage willingly or not with a 12-year-old, someone who's a minor, there are consequences for that here, right? Even if it's statutory, right? And even if you will be held accountable in some ways, may not go to jail for it. But when Americans and others go to other countries looking for that, is there an international accountability for these individuals who are adding to that, right? Because you need a customer to be able to have a product that people want. And if people on the other side, it's a slap on the wrist for the folks who are exploiting it, but the person who is participating in it for exploitation or just trying to live is punished more severely. What's the deterrent, I guess, to keep people from traveling from abroad to these countries like Cameroon to exploit this? And you both can weigh in on this because I love it.
It's very complicated. It's just like corruption, right? There are countries that are corrupted. Here in America, they say no corruption. But in some countries, they will be like, okay, you can, or maybe if you do, you won't be punished. So you look for the product. American, for example, go abroad and look for a product. He won't be punished there, but America need to punish those who go there to try to break the law, as they know that here in America it's prohibited.
Well, that's what I say. Is there any accountability for people who do that and we find out and they come back to the States? Are they held accountable for that?
What happens right now is there are international laws and
that's
there are treaties from some countries, but not all countries, because what happens too is there is no uniformity system. It's just like if you're being charged with a crime in Massachusetts, it may not be the same elements that you need to prove a crime, let's say maybe in New Jersey. So right now, to be honest with you, education is honestly the biggest powerful tool that we can do. The more we can have conversations, the more we can talk about human rights, and people can understand what human rights are. Because in some regions of the world, like for example, I'm working in Uganda, we don't even use the word human rights. It's something which the government doesn't want. Like for example, I have a law practice I'm developing there with 2 other partners, and we can only use the word human advocacy. So the first thing we're doing is making sure as well that we're working with governmental entities in different regions of the world to really educate them, empower them. Because what happens too is, in many countries, a lot of things are covered up, a lot of things are not talked about. You know, if a person, you know, is having an issue, many times you're being told in those countries that we don't talk about it. You know, it's a black eye in the family. So we're really working to honestly educate people, you know, and that's people in all sectors in government.
Renee, is this something that you run up against when you were working in human trafficking, the bureaucracies from, or did you have experience these from people who were victims from an international that weren't from the United States that were here illegally? Did that pose a problem for your investigation?
Absolutely, because what you have to understand is that, and like your caller just said, culturally, some things are accepted or a blind eye is turned to. And so if you come from a country where, let's say, the sex trade is prevalent, and that's something that you do, and it's kind of accepted, for lack of a better term, when you get here, you're going to believe that the laws are the same. And when you speak about the international traveling and what have you, understand that is a culture. And like anything else, people know where to navigate to get what they want. And so when they go into these other countries to engage in sexual deviancy, if you will, they already know where to go, how to get, and normally the child or the person would be brought to them. They've already paid into this. And because of the fact that we do live in a world that does have some form of corruption, sometimes the hierarchy is paid off to kind of turn a blind eye to this. And so when we talk about human trafficking, it is extremely complex, and it gets even more complex when you start talking about internationally. And so when it is reported back to the United States that someone has traveled abroad, that's where our federal agencies come into part, and then actions are taken. And sometimes we have to go to that country to do some investigation. So it is, when it's reported, it's acted upon, but it's still a difficult crime to pursue just because of the bureaucracy in other countries.
Right, and we have no authority in these countries. We can only ask for their assistance, and if it's not looked and dealt with or looked at as a seriousness, it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Attorney Simei, you talked about can you talk a little bit about the mental health of someone that is going through this, and how, you know, that identifies to the average person of someone being exploited in this way?
Yes, when you see someone who is being exploited, it's someone who is like...
If you don't mind, come a little closer.
Yeah, it's someone who is calm. If you can see a woman, she's calm, she doesn't talk. As Sean was saying before, when you go to those stores, those nail salons, the salons, it's someone, when you want to engage a conversation, the person won't talk because the boss told them don't talk to anyone because they might discover what they are doing there. Most of the time, those people, they are very disturbed. They are disturbed. They're a disturbed person.
So, wow. So, Attorney Bartow, it doesn't seem like there is an end. I'm almost I'm motivated to want to help, but it almost seems like it's an issue that we can't get our arms wrapped around.
So I'd have to say that the world that we live in is about doing. And the more that people are proactive and people begin to get educated, recognize the signs, and work together collectively, no matter where we are in the world, And human rights, everyone has human rights, whether, a person knows it or not. So really, if you know what your rights are, then you can use them. But if you don't know what your rights are, you can exercise them. And, the jurisdictions are different in different regions of the world. Sometimes the government has no legal authority. So, there's been progress, to be honest with you. One of the individuals that we work with, his name is Harold D'Souza, and he worked with President Obama at the White House. He works with us directly. He also was reappointed by Donald Trump, and he worked with Ivanka Trump at the White House. He works for the U.S. Human Advisory Council, and he is one of the people that works with us very closely. We had an event in New Hampshire last year where we had him come in and talk. And just really, we opened these events to the public. We have these campaigns. So we have a series of campaigns where we go out, we invite the public, and we put on different forums. And that's where this begins. We also invite our elected officials. We invite, other lawyers. We invite, everyone, advocates, housewives, children, teachers. And the more we really can begin to recognize that what's happening is wrong.
Well, that's a good segue, because I want to pose this question to Kurt. Kurt, I know you said, in your field, you see something, say something. How do we start a campaign with realtors? Because like you said, I didn't realize to what you said and the way you explained it so eloquently, that they are actually a lot of the eyes and ears, because a lot of these places need a location for this to take place. How do we partner with folks like our attorneys and folks who are listening out there to get more information out there, with folks like retired detective Renee Callender? How can the realtor association play a bigger part in with that, with law enforcement and with the community, in educating folks how to identify these signs that clearly you're on top of it, but most people, they just want to steal the deal. They want to lease that property, and they don't. I mean, I know you would rather lose a sale than to know that something like this is going to take place in a property that you're selling or leasing. But not everyone is educated in the way you are. How do we start that process, sir?
Well, and thank you again for the question, Larry. I think it really does come down to education and awareness. And that's one of the reasons why the National Association of Realtors made it a priority in 2023. I'll tell you, when I was sitting in the room, and I believe we had Miss Smart come in to tell us her story from when she was abducted, I hadn't been aware of it. I mean, you know about it, you hear it, but you're like, it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. It doesn't happen in my community. And the reality is this is happening in every community, every city across the country. So I think people in general are good and decent and want to make differences and want to help. And it really does start with awareness. So obviously the Realtor organization was very cognizant of that, and we're doing our part to make sure that our members are aware, so that if they see something, they can say something. I think it's about those collaborations between law enforcement, the organizations that are trying to make a difference, and your larger national organizations that have people on the ground that can help with the mission, working in concert to try to make a difference one child at a time. And again, educate and make sure people are aware, so that when they see something, they say something. And if something as simple as writing down that phone number in that text message that can be sent, I would encourage all of your listeners to write it down, put it in your car, put it on a small piece of paper in your wallet, because you don't need it today, but that moment when you will need it, you want to make sure that you know where it is to be able to access the information.
Okay. And Pastor Hobbs has some comments from our audience on listening online.
Brother Eric Kennedy says, Faces of Hope Advocacy Group out of Hyde Park, Mass. is a local nonprofit organization that helps victims of human trafficking. The founder is Pamela Love.
And he also said that there's an organization, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, STEP. It's step.state.gov. He said to encourage everyone with young people, everyone to enroll in STEP when traveling abroad. So he said it's at step.state.gov. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but I guess it's some place where you can register if you're traveling abroad with young people.
Can you get that number again, please?
Sure. It's
the help.
We're gonna. Actually, it was gonna go around because we're running short on time. If we don't mind giving out your contact information and how you can be reached.
Yes, my contact information is 978-242-2901. 978-242-2901. Marley Sime.
And your organization again?
Chris Foundation.
Chris Foundation.
Yeah.
And
Based in Lowell.
In Lowell. Attorney Butto, sir.
Yeah, I want to share again the human trafficking hotline number again for anyone who's listening. 1-888-373-7888. You can also reach me at 978-608-3375. We're also available as well to come to organizations. We do training workshops. We also have campaigns which we have on an international level where we have people from across the globe come and present. So, we're doing our part by making sure that we're proactively educating, law enforcement, judges,
Right.
Everyone in the community needs to understand this.
Well, I was going to say, do you have any upcoming workshops or anything that you're going to, like my organization, I'm the past president of the Minority Police Association. We have a monthly membership meeting. I think something like this would be very helpful because we do it by Zoom or even in person, and we could do a Zoom. So informing our law enforcement partners, because a lot of us that are in it, unlike Renee, who specializes in this,
yes,
we don't really get enough training about it.
Correct.
Because we're servicing calls, and a lot of times it's not that, or it may be that, but we can't even identify it. So
Human Trafficking Awareness Day was January 11th. So we were part of a lot of different training workshops that we had back then. And that's when we had the Honorable Harold D'Souza. He was a victim of human trafficking, and that's where President Obama appointed him at the White House after hearing about his story. So we did a lot of work in January, but we do have a few things which we have upcoming. Not in the calendar yet because I'm also working in different countries. So
please keep
I'm
us
going
involved.
to Dominican Republic on March 22nd to the 25th for the work that we're doing. And then I have a project in South Africa with the mayor from the same town where Winnie Mandela is from. We're working on these global initiatives. So we're very happy if we have anything to definitely have anyone come and attend, because this is what the mission is. We're committed our life just to service, and this is something where it's 24/7 for us. It's not a part-time job. It's not even a job.
Right, it's a calling. And Kirk, your contact information, sir?
My number is 978-833-3569, but most importantly, it's contact these organizations. If you see something, say something, stay aware, stay vigilant. It's all of our responsibility to do something.
And Renee, how can folks reach out to you? I know you have your new nonprofit there, but and how folks can reach out to that conflict resolution. I think this kind of falls somewhere in there as well, because I know you're out there helping.
It does, and as a matter of fact, I am working with a young lady, a family whose daughter is involved in human trafficking, and she's 14 years old.
Wow.
So, my contact information, people can call me. My number is 617-594-3905. And one of the things that I would say is, when you're talking about having trainings and what have you, sometimes it's nice to have them in small groups. That gives people the opportunities to ask a lot of questions, because this particular segment of life is extremely complex, even when you start talking about identification, and people have been exposed to it whether they realize it or not. And sometimes a lot of people just have questions that just does not rest well with them. So I would definitely say conversations definitely need to be had around this particular crime.
All right. And Cora, quickly, your information. We've got about a minute. We're going to wrap up.
I just want to thank Attorney Simi and Attorney Sean here for gracing this event. And I think what we need to do is continue with the conversation.
Make this a regular.
And I think also that the law enforcers has a big role to play here.
Yeah.
And maybe we can do, instead of your regular meeting, maybe we can bring in Attorney Bartu and Attorney Simi and do some, start with it. And if they want to move forward with more training, intensive training, then we can also set aside, like what Detective Renee Callender said, that we can also from there we can branch out to small groups so that we can have an effective training. So this is Cora Holbrook of Guaranteed Rate,
A
508.
guaranteed rate. Right. Ma'am Leo's sponsor. Matter of fact, she's, we'll give her contact information, as we always do at the top of the hour, the information of Cora, and thank her for also reaching out and offering these most valuable, informative conversations here. Thank you all for gracing your ears here at the round table. Absolutely. Quickly.
Yes, I would like to say that it happens in our household. So beware of closed doors.
Okay.
Beware of basement where you can't reach. Beware of people who are missing. It had happened in Germany, 18 years. This man locked up his own daughter, making babies, 6 babies.
Wow.
That was...
It's a tragic,
Yes.
and we're all going to do our part.
Yes.
We're going to continue this conversation. You've been listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Hill. I'm your host, Larry Elson, and the doctor will be back in. He should be good and well and fed by now. We're going to take our break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Came up from the bottom, always rooting for the
I always dreamed I'd be on tour. Instead of laying dealers on the floor, sitting in the